What? What? Would you? What, you thought I was dead? Hey, I'm only 100. What? Well, you want to talk football? Here we are. Okay, I go to the hospital every day, but I'm still here. I'm trying to get you all this useless information while I'm still alive, because they say people want to know about it. Let's start with the NFL. We'll do college another day. What I want to do is help bring you up the people that want to know this stuff. Like, you know, you run into those people say they know football, and then you go talk to them, and you say, okay, well, who was, like in 1955, they had the very first rookie of the year in the NFL. And a guy will say, well, how do I know? I wasn't even born in 55. What's that got to do with anything? I wasn't born when the NFL started either. But you're either into this or you're not into it. So, who was the rookie of the year in 1955? Actually, it was Alan Amici from from Wisconsin. So, who won the Heisman Trophy the year before. Anyway, what I thought you might like to know before we start into lines and all that kind of thing is, I wonder if anybody here knows what year the NFL started. There's been football for years and years, and it was called a pigskin, and they used parts of a pig, livers, kidney. You don't need to know all that stuff. So anyway, in 1920, the NFL original year had 14 teams, and they met in Canton, Ohio, where the Hall of Fame is, and they decided on, they'd all put up $100, and they would form this league called the National Football League. And of course, before that, there was teams that played teams. There was no organization or anything. There was a team in Portsmouth, a team wherever. So there was 14 teams, and they didn't have a championship. They just rated the whoever had the best record at the end of the year. And the team called the Akron Pros was the champions of 1920. I know, it sounds strange now. That's the home of, who's our basketball star?
The other way. 2.5. Ball deflected. Oh.
So anyway, he's from Akron also. So anyway, the next year, they advanced. They had 18 teams. Now the second year is the year that the Green Bay Packers joined the NFL. And the only team that was in 1920 that we still have the nickname today, the Cardinals, actually ended fourth in that very first year as the Chicago Cardinals. So anyway, the very next year, the top three teams was just the opposite of the 1920. So the Buffalo All-Americans were first. Now it's the Decatur Staleys, which you'll come to know as the Chicago Bears, were second. And number three was the Akron Pros. So this is the way that the team started. Then they started playing playoffs. The next year there was 21 teams. And then it was like a few years before they all leveled out. And Canton, even though that was where they were from, had a great team, but they couldn't draw any people. So someone bought the Canton Bulldogs, where the Hall of Fame is now, and moved them to Cleveland. And had good crowds and stuff, but they wanted to have a team in Canton. So he took it back to Canton. They win the championship in 22. They win the championship in 23. And he moves them back to Cleveland again because they can't get any attendance. So anyway, they go back to Cleveland, and they win the championship in 24 as the Cleveland Bulldogs. So here we are. This is how it's basically got started. And then teams would go on, and some would fall aside. Actually, there's teams like Dayton. I think the Dayton Triangles that lasted for like 10 or 20 years. They never finished in the top 2 or 3. But the next year, by the way, the 22nd, was the year that the Decatur Staleys were now called the Chicago Bears. So anyway, that's basically how it all started. And then people left and came back. The New York Football Giants, who we all know now, and they had the worst record. I think they were 0-2 or 0-6 or something. So they left the league and didn't even come back till 1925. I think everybody will remember when they gave $5,000 to the Galloping Ghost, who had just graduated from Illinois, to play. And they had like 75,000 people in 1925. And of course, they stayed in the league after that. But they were gone the 3 years in between. So the only team that his original name was the Chicago Cardinals, but they're not in Chicago anymore, as you know. So if you want me to go from here, what we ought to do is I want to talk to you about some of the different players and things that people that act like they know sports or know football would know. I mean, before I start, I really do want to give. I don't know just football, which people think that's all I know. I know baseball, but I don't care for it. But I'm going to give you some baseball scores right now so you'll understand. 3-0, 4-1, and then 12 innings, 6-5. Okay, now back to football. When they start giving out awards, that's the time that people should recognize like the different things that in the past, if they want to gain that knowledge coming forward into the 30s, where the Giants and the Packers become really good, and the Redskins, when they get Sammy Baugh, become beyond good. So he may be the greatest quarterback ever after Elway and Otto Graham. So anyway, the very first big game that the people relate to the most is that game where the champions of the East and the West. The Giants was usually the champions of the East, and in the West it was usually the Los Angeles Rams, who started where? Right, Cleveland, Ohio. So the Cleveland Rams won the championship in 1945. And then, of course, they left for L.A. So let's stop here because I want to give you the greatest football story ever. In 1946, the Rams leave for the Coliseum, built for the 32 Olympics, and Cleveland's without a team. Well, Paul Brown begged to get in the NFL for, years. And Bert Bell, the commissioner, who owned part of the Philadelphia Eagles, would not let him in. You're not good enough, stuff like that. So they went and formed another league, as you might have heard. So the Browns were in a league called the All-American Football Conference. And it only lasted for 4 years because they won all the championships. So Bert Bell finally said, well, okay, you come in. In those days, they didn't give you anything, didn't help you with anything. They just say, here, give me your money and come on in. Bring your own players and do whatever you want. So this is the first season, 1950. So to help them out further, Bert Bell takes and makes them play who? The Philadelphia Eagles. Who are the Eagles? They just won the championship the year before. There was no Super Bowls back then, right? And he made them play them in Philadelphia. After the game, the Browns killed them. I mean, Otto Graham, they were going crazy. They didn't even know what hit them. Between Marion Motley and Dante Lavelli and Dub Jones. I mean, they were so confused. So you know how teams play each other home and away? Well, 4 weeks later, because the owner of the Eagles complained so much, Bell, by the way, actually said, that's the greatest team I've ever seen. They beat them 35-10, had 2 touchdowns called back. But so they play each other again in Cleveland, and because they complained so much about high school ball and funny stuff and all like that, Paul Brown didn't let Otto Graham throw one pass, not one. And so they still ran all over the champions again. So to get us to the end of that season, that's the 1950 season, they were the champions of the East, Cleveland Browns. Well, who was the champions of the West? The Rams, who had left Cleveland. Okay, now the championship game is going to be played in the Coliseum. Browns got no break this first year at all. And they beat the team that left Cleveland in 1950 by a field goal by Lou Groza with time running out, 30-28. Now, that might be the greatest football story in the history. I could be right, but I know I'm not left. Anyway, I just wanted to bring you up to date and tell you a little bit what's going on. So let me talk to you about the lines and these games. I got to tell you, 40 years ago, there was a coach with the Washington Redskins, George Allen. He started his starters in all, they had 6 preseason games back then. And he started his starters all 6 games. Now there's only 4, thank heavens. And yes, because he hated rookies, he hated draft choices, he traded them all away. I mean, he got some good players for a couple years. Then The Redskins were dead. So anyway, you look at these, and you have to realize these people draft these people. They got to take a look at them. So there's 4 games now. They don't, and people want to ask me, oh golly, should I bet this game? Look at, oh geez, let's see. Packers are -2 over the Eagles. This is a preseason game. Who's going to play? You know who's going to play. It's got to be rookies. People don't do what Allen did. You have to look at all the people that you've drafted, that you traded for. So what I'm really saying is, don't bet these games. But you don't want to hear that, so I'll tell you this, as somebody who's been in jail for gambling. Yes, my voice went. So you don't want to bet them, but you have to bet, and I realize that. So let's say you call your guy, and you're in love because you're living in what? Well, if you live in New York, you got 2 teams to choose from. So let's say you're living in, well, Minnesota. Now you want to bet the Vikings are your team, the whole deal. Well, you know, Bridgewater's out all last year. They traded to get another quarterback. They got a good defensive back in the draft before that. They didn't make the playoffs last year, though. They've got to look at the people they went out and got. So until the 4th game, you more than likely will not see a starting quarterback more than the first quarter. And maybe in the 4th and last game, he might play 2 quarters, right, the week before the real season starts. Other than that, you're just going to see new offensive linemen, which is great. They always think offensive linemen can take it because they're 300-plus pounds. So they're going to play them a lot if they drafted for them or traded for them. So those positions, and of course, running backs, they're going to take a look at all those fast little running backs that came from small colleges and stuff, and some of them in to be great. So I just say, I don't know. I know there's no way to get around it. There's no way to say, look at Atlanta. I mean, they messed up the Super Bowl. They had everything. It was all laid out for them. But all you hear is about, boy, the Patriots, boy, the Patriots. The heck, they didn't do anything. What did Seattle do 3 years before? They got the game won. Throws an interception from the 4-yard line. Just give it to beast mode 3 times. Russell, please roll around in 3 times. Run it in, throw it in, do something. No, we're going to call a pass. I don't know about you, but I'd have to fire the coach that did that. I don't care even if they got to the Super Bowl. Anyway, let's talk later on next week about this, some other things in pro football, and bring you up to speed and stuff. And because I want to get with you if I can, if you're interested in college football, which will take a lot more time and so forth. So anyway, well, thanks for watching. Oh, you're supposed to be bad or something? Huh? Well, come next week and we'll find out. Maybe you are. Ace out.